My name is Daniel Brooks. I was born in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where people know your last name before they know your face. I grew up on the edge of that town, in a narrow house with thin walls and even thinner patience. From the outside, my life probably looked ordinary. Inside, it always felt unfinished. My father worked long hours and spoke very little. When he was home, silence followed him from room to room like a shadow. He believed providing was enough, that feelings were a weakness men couldn't afford. My mother tried to fill the gaps he left behind. She talked more, worried more, hoped more. She was tired in a way sleep never fixed. I learned early that love didn't always sound like love. Sometimes it sounded like exhaustion. I wasn't a bad kid, but I wasn't an easy one either. At school, I sat in the back and watched instead of participating. Teachers said I was smart but distracted. Truth was, my mind was always somewhere else. I was thinking about how to get out, how to be more than what everyone expected me to be. In a town like that, expectations are cages you don't see until you try to move. I left school early, not because I hated learning, but because I thought life was waiting somewhere else and I was late. I started working at 16, warehouses, construction sites, anywhere that paid cash and didn't ask questions. My hands hardened, my back ached, and slowly I started believing this was all I was meant for. Work, sleep, repeat. No future, just momentum. In my early 20s, I moved from place to place. Cheap apartments, shared rooms, sometimes couches. I met people like me, men running from something, women hoping for something better. We talked about dreams late at night and forgot them by morning. I told myself I was free because no one depended on me. What I didn't realize was that I had also stopped depending on myself. I made choices quickly back then. I didn't think about consequences because consequences felt like a problem for older men. I lived fast, angry, and numb. I avoided mirrors. I avoided calls from home. I avoided anything that forced me to slow down and look at who I was becoming. There were good moments. I won't deny that. Laughter in bars, music playing too loud, the feeling of belonging, even if it was temporary, but everything was temporary. Jobs ended. People left. Nights blurred together. I kept telling myself I had time, time to fix things, time to become someone better. Time, I thought, was endless. Now I understand how wrong I was. Before this cell, before the bars and the numbers and the locked doors, I was already trapped. Trapped in habits, in pride, in the idea that tomorrow would always be there to clean up today. My life didn't collapse all at once. It cracked slowly, quietly, until one day there was nothing left to hold it together. This is who I was before the crime, before the sentence, before the regret. Just a man who thought he was moving forward when in truth he was standing still. I used to believe that one bad decision couldn't erase an entire life. I was wrong. The truth is, the crime I committed wasn't born in a single moment. It was the result of years of impatience, anger, choices I kept postponing responsibility for. By the time it happened, I was already exhausted, not physically, but mentally. I was tired of being invisible, tired of struggling, tired of watching other people move forward while I stayed stuck in the same place. I felt cheated by life, even though I never stopped to ask what I had actually given back to it. That sense of injustice sat inside me like a constant noise, growing louder every day, and I was working irregular jobs then, barely enough to cover rent. Debt followed me everywhere. Bills piled up unopened. Calls went unanswered. I started telling myself stories to justify things. Everyone cuts corners. Everyone does what they have to do. I wasn't thinking about right or wrong anymore. I was thinking about survival, or at least that's what I called it. The night it happened wasn't special. That's the part that haunts me the most. No dramatic build-up, no clear warning signs. Just another night that felt like all the others. I met with people I shouldn't have trusted. People who spoke the same language of shortcuts and excuses. They offered a way out. Quick money, easy work. I knew it was illegal. I knew it could go wrong. I told myself I was just participating, not responsible for the outcome. That lie lasted longer than I expected. Things escalated fast. A plan meant to intimidate turned into something violent. Fear took over, and fear makes you stupid. When control slips away, instincts replace reason. I reacted instead of thinking. I crossed a line I can never step back over. Someone was hurt. A life was destroyed. More than one, if I'm honest. I remember the sounds clearly, the confusion. The moment when silence fell and I knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel victory. I felt empty, like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Still, instead of facing what I had done, I ran, physically and mentally. I tried to disappear into normal days, pretending it was just a bad dream. But guilt doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. When they arrested me, I didn't resist. Part of me was relieved it was over. The running, the pretending, the lies I kept telling myself. In the interrogation room, surrounded by cold walls and colder faces, the story I had built for years finally collapsed. There were no excuses that worked there. No one cared how hard my life had been. All that mattered was what I had done. In court, I listened as my actions were described by strangers. They used my name like it belonged to someone else. I wanted to stand up and explain myself, to say I wasn't a monster, just a man who made mistakes. But I realized something painful in that moment. Intentions don't erase consequences. I was sentenced, and with that sentence, my past stopped being something I could run from. The crime became the center of my story, the thing everything else is measured against. In this place, I'm not defined by where I grew up or what I dreamed of becoming. I am defined by one act, one night, one irreversible decision. Regret doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't hit you the moment the cell door closes or the sentence is read out loud. At least it didn't for me. At first there was shock, then anger, then a strange numbness that felt like protection. Real regret came later, quietly, when there was nothing left to distract me from myself. In this cell, time doesn't move forward, it circles. Every night I lie on this bed and replay the same memories. Not the ones I want, but the ones that refuse to leave. I think about the person I was before I convinced myself I had no choices. I think about the moment I could have walked away and didn't. Regret lives in those small moments, the ones that seem insignificant until they define your entire life. I regret more than the crime itself. I regret the warnings I ignored, the calls I didn't return, the pride that kept me from asking for help. I regret believing that strength meant carrying everything alone. Looking back, I see how many exits I passed without noticing, how many chances I had to slow down, to choose differently. The hardest part of regret is understanding the damage you can never repair. I can reflect, I can apologize, I can change who I am now, but I can't undo what I did. Someone else has to live with the consequences of my actions every day, just like I do, but in a very different way. That knowledge sits heavy in my chest. It doesn't fade with time, and if anything, it grows sharper. I think about my family often, about my mother reading my name in court documents instead of birthday cards, about the silence I inherited from my father and passed on without realizing it. I regret the pain I caused them, pain they never asked for. Prison punishes the body, but Regret punishes the mind, and it doesn't follow any schedule. There are nights when I imagine who I might have been if I had made one better decision: a different job, a different crowd, a pause instead of a reaction. Those thoughts are dangerous if you stay in them too long, but they are also honest. They remind me that I was not born a criminal. I became one through neglect, my own and others. Regret for me is not just sorrow, it is responsibility. It is finally seeing myself clearly, without excuses, without the stories I used to survive. I don't ask for forgiveness anymore. I know some things don't deserve it. What I ask for instead is the chance to not waste what's left of my life. If this cell has taught me anything, it's that postponing change is its own kind of crime. I lived for years believing tomorrow would fix what I refused to face today. Now tomorrow looks exactly like yesterday, and yesterday looks exactly like today. That is my punishment. That is my regret. That is